When discussing the idea of declaring one single game in the NBA's long history as the greatest game ever played, there are a few games that many people stand by as much as Game 5 of the 1976 Finals between the Boston Celtics and the Phoenix Suns. To give some context to this game, let's go over the players and personnel involved. The Celtics were looking to redeem themselves after their defeat to the Bullets in the 1975 East Finals. In that year's offseason, they made a couple of tweaks to their roster, but one of the more shocking moments was when their starting shooting guard, Don Chaney, made the decision to jump leagues from the NBA to the ABA. Chaney was one of the best defensive guards in the league, and he was a big reason the Bucks' backcourt struggled in the 1974 Finals. With a hole now in their starting lineup, the Celtics decided to fix it by sending Paul Westphal and some draft picks to the Phoenix Suns in exchange for Charlie Scott. Scott had been a three-time All-Star with the Suns, and is one of the greatest scorers of the 70s that people tend to forget. Although his numbers were impressive, the team records were not, which is probably why Phoenix decided to part ways with him. In the 1976 East Semis, the Celtics defeated the Braves in 6 games, but John Havlicek had injured his left foot in Game 1, resulting in him having to miss Games 2, 3, and 4. He played all 6 games in the East Finals versus the Cavaliers, but in total, Havlicek only played 149 minutes in that series, while also coming off the bench for the last 2 games. And even though they had made the finals, the Celtics were worried about having to play with their team captain injured. Starting at point guard for the Celtics was JoJo White, who had been raising his game considerably up to this point. Throughout the entire 1976 postseason, White led all players in scoring with 408 total points, and he also tied for the most total assists with 98. At shooting guard, Charlie Scott had sacrificed his individual success in order to buy into the Celtics' team-first approach to basketball. He executed his new role to perfection, but he also did still get his moment to shine every now and then, like when he dropped 31 points in Game 6 against the Braves to close out that series. With Havlicek's foot being a cause for concern going into the finals, Coach Tom Heinsohn made the decision to start Don Nelson at small forward for the first few games. Nelson had been the team's glue guy for almost an entire decade up to this point. At power forward was the first piece of the best defensive frontcourt in the league in 1976, Paul Silas, who had been controlling the boards alongside his partner in the paint, the Celtics center, Dave Cowens. Over the course of the 76 playoffs, Cowens grabbed 296 total rebounds, the most by any player. On the bench, you of course had John Havlicek for the first 4 games, but there were also important guys like Jim Ard, Glenn McDonald, Steve Kuberski, and Kevin Stakem. Meanwhile, on the other side of the country, the Phoenix Suns had quite a surprising season. The Suns hadn't made the playoffs since 1970, and they sure didn't have the star power or history that the Celtics did. The team had only finished with a 42-40 record in 1976, just 2 games above 500, but they pulled off a major upset against the defending champion Warriors in the West Finals. Starting at point guard, Paul Westphal had his breakout year. On the Celtics, Westphal was the team's go-to guard off the bench, and he was certainly valuable, but with the Suns, he proved that he was totally capable of being a first option type of player. He showed off his versatile skill set and became the Suns' leading scorer. At shooting guard was the rookie Ricky Sobers. 2 fun facts about Sobers. 1, he never played basketball in high school, and 2, he's on a poster I have in my room. Although, to be fair, it's not him as a Sun, and it's really not his poster in general, but... At small forward was Curtis Perry, fresh off an appearance in the 1974 Finals when he was a member of the Bucks. At power forward was Garfield Hurd, better known as Gar Hurd, the team's best rebounder throughout the playoffs, and also super clutch, but more on that in a bit. And starting at center was another rookie, the 6'9" Alvin Adams. Not only did Adams win the 1976 Rookie of the Year, but he was also named an All-Star this same season. He's often forgotten about by fans because his best season was his very first one, but he was a huge reason for the Suns' success in 1976, as he was their second leading scorer, rebounder, and he even racked up 98 total assists, tying JoJo White for the most in the 1976 playoffs. Rounding out the rest of the roster however, were guys like Dick Van Arsdale, Keith Erickson, Dennis Autry, Nate Hawthorne, and Phil Lumpkin. The Celtics won the first 2 games of the finals with ease. John Havlicek looked like he wasn't even injured since he played 40 minutes in the first game and scored a team-high 23 points in Game 2 off the bench. Back in Phoenix, however, the Suns evened up the series. The Celtics had a chance to send Game 4 into overtime, but JoJo White missed the tie right at the buzzer. For Game 5, Heinsohn made the decision to finally start Havlicek, and even though he had still played starters minutes, just having Hondo in the starting lineup had a clear impact when the game began, as the Celtics looked almost Showtime-esque in how fast they were, not to mention they were pulling down almost every rebound and hitting almost every shot. The Suns' shooting percentages had gotten better and better with each game, but they were having a hard time finding the shooting touch in this first quarter. Even worse, after only 4 minutes of play, Keith Erickson suffered an ankle injury that forced him to go back to the locker room and never return. Erickson had hit a huge buzzer beater in Game 4 of the West Finals, so now the Suns didn't have one of their best clutch shooters. With 10 seconds left in the first, Ricky Sobers spun and hit a hook shot, and then Jim Ard immediately responded with a buzzer-beating shot. The first quarter ended with the Celtics leading 36-18. Early into the second, the Celtics led by as much as 42-20, with 19 of those points coming from Havlicek. Boston was running their patented fast break offense, though instead of going for layups, they would usually stop to shoot jumpers. Soon, Phoenix began clawing their way back in the second quarter, going on a 19-4 run, thanks to Westphal, Adams, and Hurd. At one point, Hurd tried hitting a turnaround shot, but he was covered by Silas. This wouldn't deter Hurd from shooting turnarounds later on in the game, however. At this point in the series, the rookie Adams had held his own very well against the former MVP Cowens. Adams had scored 26 in Game 1 and 33 in Game 3, but Cowens was still beating him on the boards. To neutralize Cowens, the Suns decided to double him, as well as run lineups on the floor that featured their 2 centers, Adams and Dennis Autry. And many times on defense, you can see the Suns crowd below the basket. To avoid that crowded paint, the Celtics ran a spread-out half-court set, with only one big man on a block at a time. Cowens and Silas would take turns stepping out to the perimeter. After cutting the deficit down to only 7 points, the Suns began forcing bad shots from the outside, which resulted in the Celtics taking a large lead again. The first half ended with a score of 61-45. At the start of the third, however, the Celtics began shooting nothing but bricks. The Suns went on a 21-7 run, knocking down the long shots they had missed throughout the first half. At one point, the Suns were shooting 67% from the field in the third quarter, while Boston shot only 19%. The Suns were finally able to tie the game 68-68. The Suns' rebounding had also improved from the first half. The Celtics could have used Paul Silas to help stop the Suns from grabbing nearly every board, but with 5 personal fouls, Heinsohn had to bench Silas out of fear of losing him too early. The Suns' defense was also very good, as they kept clogging the passing lanes and forcing Boston into turnovers. The Celtics were holding on to a small lead with 8 seconds left in the third, so Cowens decided to dribble into the paint to draw contact, and it worked. A whistle was blown, and Alvin Adams was called for his 5th foul. The Celtics led 77-72 by the end of the third quarter. Despite getting off to a good start, Havlicek did not score at all in the third, and he wouldn't score again until there was under 4 minutes left in the fourth quarter. The Celtics and Suns traded baskets all fourth quarter. Westphal specifically was huge for his team, as he hit a turnaround shot to make it a 91-94 game, and then the very next play, he stole the ball and scored an and one, all with under a minute left. The foul on Westphal was committed by Charlie Scott, which was his 6th, resulting in him being ejected. As such, Havlicek had to be moved to shooting guard to help JoJo White in the backcourt. The next play, an over-the-back foul was called on Cowens. Curtis Perry made one of his 2 free throws, which gave the Suns a 95-94 lead. Eager to put the game away, the Celtics gave the ball to Havlicek, who rose up for a shot, but was fouled by Adams. That was Adams' 6th foul of the game, meaning both teams now had a star get ejected. ejected. Like Perry, Havlicek made one free throw and then missed his second, but he immediately grabbed his own rebound. He passed to JoJo White, but then called for the ball. Hondo tried to pull up for the jump shot, but he missed, and the Suns called a timeout with 3 seconds left. As the Suns inbounded the ball, Cowens managed to steal the pass, but with 1 second left, you can see Paul Silas signal for a timeout right in front of referee Richie Powers. But here's the thing, Boston had no more timeouts left. If you call a timeout with none left, you receive a technical foul. Realistically, Silas should have been called for that, but for some reason, Powers didn't see him. This wouldn't be the final occurrence of a player calling a timeout when he had none left in this game, however. But anyway, the game was going into overtime. Both teams only scored 6 points in the first overtime. It was a tough back and forth battle. Both teams were playing the best defense they had played all game. Curtis Perry got a cramp in his leg at one point. Cowens collided with Westphal.
Cowens cutting off.
With 3 seconds left, Boston had possession of the ball, so they got it to the one person who you get the ball to in situations like this, Havlicek. He drove to the far right corner, he rose up, and he missed it. The game was going into a second overtime. The Suns missed 2 different turnaround shots at the start, while JoJo White scored 2 field goals of his own.
Now Sobers veers out. Now instead of just playing good defense with him, he tries to block the shot. Why small forwards want to become shot blockers is beyond me.
With a minute left, Cowens got the ball in the right block, he turned, and he scored. But instead of it being counted, Cowens was called for his 6th and final foul of the game. Soon after, with just under 40 seconds left, Dennis Autry was called for his 6th foul of the game, meaning the Suns no longer had a center. The best they could do was to put Gar Hurd at 5 and run a 3-guard, 2-forward lineup. JoJo White then scored another basket to put the Celtics up 109-106. With 19 seconds left, the Suns inbounded to Van Arsdale, who hit a shot from the left corner. Then, as the Celtics were inbounding, Jimard's pass was quickly stolen by Westphal, who threw it to Van Arsdale, who got it to Curtis Perry. Perry's first shot was no good, but the ball got tipped back out to him again, and on his second try, he nailed it. 110-109. Boston timeout. 5 seconds left. With only 2 good shooters on the floor, the Suns knew that the ball was going to go to either Havlicek or White. I know what you're probably thinking. JoJo has been super clutch in both overtimes, and Havlicek has been up and down in the second half and first overtime. He missed the free throw in the fourth that would have won the game, and a buzzer beater at the end of the first overtime. But throughout his entire career, Hondo has proven time and time again that when the game is on the line, he always rises to the occasion and comes through. Nelson inbounded the ball to Havlicek, and then he scored a runner to put the Celtics up 111-110. The clock counted down to 0 seconds. Boston Garden erupted. All of the Celtics ran back to the locker room, eager to celebrate their 3-2 series lead. Fans stormed the court. A fan even got into a fight with referee Richie Powers. It was absolute madness, but in the moment, the Celtics hadn't realized that when Havlicek's shot went in, there were still 2 seconds left on the clock. Instead of it stopping, however, the clock continued to wind down. Paul Westphal also called a timeout right as the shot went in, but the Suns had 0 timeouts left. So that meant that the officials had to clear the basketball court, they had to get the Celtics out of their locker room to continue playing, and let them shoot their technical free throw. JoJo White nailed the shot, putting the Celtics up 112-110. It is an NBA rule that if you call a timeout with 0 timeouts left, it's a technical foul, but you still do get the timeout. You also got possession of the ball. With 1 second left, Perry lobbed an inbound pass to Gar Hurd, who turned around and hit this ridiculous shot over Don Nelson. They're going to a 3rd overtime. The Celtics are no strangers to finals overtime games. In the 1957 finals, 2 of the games went into 2 overtimes, and in Game 6 of the 74 finals, the game also went to 2 overtimes. But never before had any finals game gone to 3 overtimes. With 3 minutes and 23 seconds left, Paul Silas received his 6th foul, after playing with 5 for seemingly forever. Now what were the Celtics gonna do? Silas had been providing them plenty of second chance opportunities with his rebounding ability, but now they don't have Silas or Cowens. Well, JoJo White hit 3 clutch shots, while Paul Westphal hit this ridiculous turnaround shot. But out of nowhere, Glenn McDonald, the unsung 6'6" forward, scored 6 points in the third overtime as Silas's replacement. With the Celtics up by 4 and 31 seconds left on the clock, the Suns attempted a Hack-a-Shaq-like strategy 20 years before Hack-a-Shaq even existed. They fouled Jim Ard with the hopes that he would miss his free throws, but Ard nailed both of them. And even then, the game still wasn't over, since Westphal scored a ridiculous 360 shot, and then got another wide open layup seconds later to make it a 2-point game. That Westphal lay-in was the final shot of the game, however, as Boston dribbled out the clock to win the game 128-126.